The following video is not made for kids. Viewer discretion is advised. Hello to my subscribers, this is the TFangy coming to you with what will hopefully be a special and quick review. And today we're going to be taking a look at one of the vintage Transformers action figures I purchased last year in 2025. And this year is an important year for the Transformers franchise because it's the year 2026, and it's the anniversary for many things that happened in the Transformers franchise. This is the, I believe if my math is correct, yes, the 40th anniversary of when the first Transformers film was released, known as Transformers the Movie. It's basically also known amongst Transformers fans as the Transformers Generation 1 film. It was released in 1986 at movie theaters and was a box office flop due to the fact that 20 minutes into the film, Optimus Prime dies and does not come back to life. And in the minds of many Transformers fans and fans at the time, most of whom were small children, it was a devastating blow. And so Hasbro learned the hard way at the time in 1986 that Optimus Prime had become more than just a cartoon character who was based off of an action figure. He was a fictional character that everyone wanted to stick around and last forever. And by the time they brought Optimus Prime back for the finale of the third season of the Transformers Generation 1 cartoon in the spring of 1987, almost 6.5 months after the Transformers G1 film had been released, it was too late for the Transformers franchise to enjoy the popularity it had enjoyed in 1984 and 1985, and so ever since then, Optimus Prime has been commander of the Transformers in almost every cartoon series. 2026 also marks the 30th anniversary of when Transformers Beast Wars was launched on television screens back in 1996, but also of equal importance, but more so amongst Transformers fans and collectors, the year 2026 marks the 20th anniversary of when a tiny line of Transformers action figures was released called Transformers Classics. It was originally designed to be a filler line throughout the year 2006, because by the beginning of 2006, the final waves of Transformers action figures being released in the Transformers Cybertron line, which had been launched the previous year in 2005, were starting to come out, and it wouldn't be until the following year in 2007, back in 2006, when the first live-action Transformers film would be released, and Hasbro wanted to release the action figures based off the characters to appear in the film to be released concurrently at the same time as the live-action film. So that left Hasbro with the second half of the year 2006 with no new Transformers action figures to really sell and fill the shelves at the time. And so rather than have Transformers disappear from the shelves entirely, and rather than restock these Transformers Cybertron action figures at the time, Hasbro decided to release the Transformers Classics line as a filler line in between Cybertron and the first live-action film. And the action figures of Transformers Classics, they were basically modern reimaginations of characters primarily from the Transformers Generation 1 franchise back in 1984, and they were the first modern action figures of Transformers Generation 1 characters that weren't re-releases or reissues of the original Generation 1 figures. And the idea of releasing and creating more modern action figures based off the original Transformers Generation 1 characters from the 1980s, with modern articulated joints and action poses, that was a craze that Transformers fans and collectors, especially the older adult age collectors who had grown up with Generation 1 in the 80s, really wholeheartedly enjoyed. And at first, Hasbro thought that the live-action films were going to be the moneymaker for the Transformers franchise. And so during the first 2 years of Transformers Classics, the Classics action figures weren't really stocked that well, and they weren't really what Hasbro focused on. But by the time the third live-action film, Transformers Dark of the Moon, was released, and it was only moderately successful. The first live-action film had done fairly well, but then Revenge of the Fallen was a box office flop. Dark of the Moon was kind of okay, and then Age of Extinction was a flop, and The Last Knight was such a horrible film, it's considered one of the worst pieces of Transformers franchises ever. But in between the live-action films, which were released at least 2 to 3 years apart, Hasbro continued to release classic-style Transformers action figures. And today, classic-style Transformers, as you can see by the wall of figures behind me, are the new Hasbro slowly realized, okay, this is the money maker, releasing modern day figures of all the Transformers characters and action figures back in the 1980s. So they continued to do that, and the idea even seeped in as recently as the first live-action film in 2007, after classics had been launched in 2006. And now that I've babbled longer than I wanted to, let's focus on the action figure that this review is going to be focusing on. And here we have one of the Transformers' first live-action movie 2007 film deluxe class action figures of Autobot Big Daddy. So the reason why I mentioned all that history about Transformers Classics is because some have argued that this is one of the few action figures from the first live-action 2007 movie one line that could be considered a Chug-style action figure. What Hasbro did for the first live-action film in 2007 and in 2008 is to expand the number of Transformers characters being given action figures based on the first live-action film. Hasbro decided to use more than just the original molds that they had designed for the first live-action movie, and they decided to just expand the sheer number of characters to be on the shelves for the first live-action movie line of Transformers action figures. And most of the molds that were available to Hasbro at the time in 2007 had been the most recent ones created, which were from the Transformers Cybertron line, and as a result, I want to say about 2/3, maybe half of the Transformers action figures from the Transformers Cybertron line were repainted and sold as characters in the Transformers first live-action movie line of action figures. And one of the ones I originally didn't get at the time, back in 2007 and 2008, was the Walmart exclusive deluxe class Autobot Big Daddy action figure. So some of the characters in the film, such as this guy, were, instead of being brand new characters, they were reimaginations of older Transformers characters. And that's what Big Daddy is. He was a Micromaster back in the original Transformers Generation 1 line, and when Hasbro was looking at molds from the Cybertron line to release in the first live-action film, they decided that one of the figures in the Cybertron line that had sold fairly well had been the deluxe class Transformers Cybertron Downshift mold. Downshift was based off of the Energon character of Downshift, whose design was based off of Generation 1 Wheeljack, and if you want to go into the history of Wheeljack versus Downshift, then watch my review of Transformers Legacy Armada Wheeljack to find out those details. Great with a better explanation. But here's a sculpt of Big Daddy's head, and it's basically Generation 1 Wheeljack and Generation 1 Big Daddy's color scheme. As I said, he was originally a Micromaster, and recently in the Transformers Siege and Earthrise lines, Hasbro released modern-day action figures of the Micromasters, and Big Daddy was one of them. So here is his Transformers. I believe Big Daddy was released in the Earthrise line. Hasbro unfortunately lost the registered trademark for his original Generation 1 name, and so his Earthrise Micromaster figure was given the new copyrighted name of Daddy-O. And the term Big Daddy is usually a term that's is a derogatory term associated with big shots who basically do criminal activities behind closed doors, or it's mostly associated with old-time gangsters such as the mafia, or maybe pimps who are unfortunately are in charge of brothels and prostitutes. So to have a Transformers character with the name Big Daddy be an Autobot instead of a Decepticon, it's kind of something that a lot of collectors laugh at, that a name you'd think would easily apply to a Decepticon is in fact the name of an Autobot. So as I said, this guy was Hasbro's first attempt at making a modern action figure of Big Daddy and also making him a live-action movie character. And as I said, he's a straight-up repaint of the Transformers Cybertron Downshift mold, and the Cybertron Downshift mold was only used twice, first on Cybertron Downshift and here on second time on Big Daddy. I do have Cybertron Downshift, but he's up on my shelf with my other Transformers Cybertron action figures, and I didn't want to get him down. Just look up an image of Cybertron Downshift, and he's mostly green with some black highlights. And so, in that regard, Big Daddy has a more monochrome paint job, since he's almost entirely black with a red-orange flame deco on the side of him, and which is accurate to his Generation 1 Micromaster figure, which the Earthrise version of is a much more G1 accurate version of him. But one could argue, since this figure is an old school deluxe class figure recycled from the Transformers Cybertron line for the first live action movie, one could argue that this is a masterpiece scale version of Big Daddy. But yeah, his the type of muscle car that Cybertron Downshift transformed into. It's not at all like the type of muscle car that both G1 and Earthrise, the G1 and Earthrise action figures of him transform into, but still, it's a pretty amazing action figure. The main reason I decided to get this, and I did want to get this back in 2007 when he was first released at Walmart stores, the reason I wanted to get him is because the Cybertron Downshift mold, even though I'm not a fan of his mostly green paint job, it's one of my favorite action figures from the Cybertron line, and I'll discuss that in more detail when we get him out of the box. But yeah, for those of you who weren't collecting Transformers action figures at the time back in 2007 when the first live-action film was released, this was the packaging that Hasbro designed for the first live-action Transformers movies. The first series, this is Big Daddy. Even though he's a Walmart exclusive, all the action figures, those released as exclusives and those released at mass retail at the time, the ones that were primarily released late in 2007 and throughout 2008, they were released under the moniker of Allspark Power, meaning that they weren't originally Autobots and Decepticons from planet Cybertron. They were Earth machines that were brought to life by the power of the Allspark, and as a result, all the Transformers action figures released under Allspark Power, well, not all of them, but most of them in one way or another were given bright blue painted highlights to show that they were brought to life by the Allspark. Allspark, because in the live action film, the Allspark would let off tiny jolts of blue lightning when it would bring Earth-made machines to life and turn them into Transformers, and so that's the idea of what Big Daddy is. He was originally a normal Earth-made sports car, and was brought to life and turned into an Autobot by the power of the Allspark. And most of the Transformers live-action figures that were repaints of figures from the Cybertron line, they were released exclusively either at Walmart, Target, or Toys R Us back in 2007 when those stores were around. I don't know if there were any Kmart exclusives back in 2007 and 2008, but most of them were released at Walmart, Target, and Toys R Us. And Big Daddy ended up being one of the deluxe figures that was released exclusively at Walmart. So for those of you wanting to look at a blast into the past, at the time back in 2007 and 2008, Transformers action figures that were released as Walmart exclusives had this sticker saying "Only at Walmart" slapped on the box. Today, the stickers showing which stores they are exclusively sold at aren't used anymore because instead of releasing action figures as issues that are exclusives in the same style packaging as those released at mass retail, Hasbro and Walmart, if they are released in the same style packaging, they don't even bother with the sticker, but it's rare to see ones released as exclusives that are sold in the same style packaging as mass retail figures. Most Walmart exclusive action figures are released in special style packaging, such as the figures in the retro line. Those that are released at Walmart instead of as exclusives that are released in the same style packaging as the mass retail figures, such as my using Age of the Primes Transformers Age of the Primes Cybertron Excellion, which I reviewed recently. There's a disclaimer such as the fact that it was from the Cybertron series to show you that it's a Walmart exclusive, but there's no sticker or anything like that actually declaring that it's a Walmart exclusive, but they did do that back in the day. So that's a little blast from the past, seeing that sticker on there. So yeah, there's a close-up of the face sculpt, and what I liked about the style of the faces for the Transformers action figures from the first live-action movie line is that it's done in a style that reflects what they would look like in the live-action film. So this is what they would look like in the real world. So for those of you wondering what Generation 1 Wheeljack's face sculpt would look like in live-action, then just replace Big Daddy's orange head sculpt with silvery gray, and you got Generation 1 Wheeljack as a live-action Transformer. So yeah, pretty style packaging, and it's really big. You bring in another Walmart exclusive Transformers retro carded figure, Brawn in this case. As you can see, the packaging for deluxe figures was much taller than it is today. Some people have said that the retro figures, being based off the Generation 1 mini-bots, are pretty big-sized packages, but they are literally the exact same width as the live-action film deluxes from 2007 and 2008, but they're not as tall. They were much taller, so yeah, everything was bigger back in the 2000s for the Transformers action figures and the Transformers franchise. And a lot of fans and collectors today say that the figures released during the Unicron trilogy lines of Armada, Energon, and Cybertron are among the largest and bulkiest Transformers action figures that have ever been released, and a lot of fans and collectors who were collecting at the time in the 2000s, myself included, were kind of secretly hoping that Transformers action figures would continue to get bigger, but unfortunately, Transformers action figures have actually gotten smaller as the years have gone by since the 2000s, so yeah, the figures such as 2007 first movie Big Daddy here, they are among the largest Transformers figures ever released. Big Daddy himself, he's roughly the size, in between the size of a modern Deluxe and modern Voyager class figure. The typical size for Deluxe class Transformers released in the Transformers Cybertron line was about 5.5 to 6 inches tall, and today the average height for Deluxe class Transformers is about 4 to 5 inches tall. So Deluxe class Transformers really have been downsized in the last 20 years. So yeah, here's the back of the box. You got some product photos. Today on the back of boxes, the retro carded figures don't show it, but on the Age of the Primes action figures, you see the number of steps it takes to transform the Transformers action figure. Hasbro didn't do that at the time back in the 2000s because the instruction sheet, once you open the Transformer and took it out of the package, would show you how many steps it would take to transform back and forth between both robot mode and alt mode. Instead, they had other things on the back of the box which are gone on modern figures, such as an entire paragraph bio explaining who the character is and what they can do, features such as weapons that they have, and something that I wish Hasbro would bring back on modern Transformers boxes, tech specs showing all the strengths and weaknesses that individual characters have. This I don't really particularly miss, but they used to advertise other Deluxe extra class Transformers that you could get at the time. So on Big Daddy's box, other figures that were sold along with him were Grindcore, who I reviewed last year on my channel, Jolt, who I got from Amazon last year, but I still have to review him, and then Dive Bomb. These guys are all repaints of Cybertron figures, and they have the same Cyber Key gimmick recycled from the Cybertron line. These were all Walmart exclusives, and then over here you got two mass retail figures, Overcast and Jungle Bone Crusher. Those are mass retail figures. I used to have them, but then I gave them away. Because I lost the appeal of having them in my collection. And then here's another blast from the past. At the time in the 2000s, Hasbro used to advertise the Transformers Collectors Club and asked everyone to sign up and join them so you could get exclusive Transformers action figures and comic books that you wouldn't normally get at retail. And then, of course, here, DreamWorks Pictures and Paramount Studios were the two film companies that made the first live-action Transformers movie possible. So, at the time in the 2000s, Transformers action figures still had spring-loaded launching missiles. For the Cybertron Downshift mold, he had two missile-firing rockets that you would attach to the top of the shoulders in robot mode. They attach to the side of the vehicle mode here. That's the only weapon storage for it. It kind of takes away the robot in disguise aesthetic, because when you remove the rocket launchers from the side of the vehicle, as you can see right here, the Cybertron Downshift mold, it's easily, out of all the Deluxe figures in the Cybertron line, it easily is one of the ones that successfully is a robot in disguise, because you don't see any robot mode kibble or robot mode parts when you transform this mold into its vehicle mode of a muscle car. So I really enjoy that it's successfully a robot in disguise. I really enjoy when Transformers action figures are able to do that. And then the other gimmick, but the gimmick with the Cyber Key gimmick from Cybertron Downshift that's recycled here for Big Daddy is you insert the Cyber Key into the back window of the vehicle mode, and when you do, the front grille of the vehicle mode pops out and becomes a laser cannon. It doesn't actually do anything. It just looks like a spring-loaded cannon that comes out of the front of the car in alt mode, and it comes out of the robot mode chest. Not one of the more interesting Cyber Key gimmicks from the Cybertron line, but it's still pretty cool that it still functions in both robot mode and alternate mode. And of course, you have the spring loaded missiles. You load the missile, push a button, and a spring launches the missile fairly far and fairly fast. Today, Transformers action figures don't come with spring-loaded missiles because modern safety standards have removed spring-activated missiles from Transformers action figures. but back in the 2000s, they were still pretty standard, and because it was believed that only someone who there's no nice way of putting it, but back in the 2000s, basically, it was believed that only someone either very stupid or very clumsy would point a spring-activated missile and shoot themselves in the eyeball. But safety standards change with time, and so spring-loaded missiles are a thing of the past. And then, to round off the back of the box, Big Daddy's paragraph-long bio reads, Big Daddy is more concerned with his paint job than with any war that might be going on. You'll most often find him cruising the main drag of whatever town he ends up in, or hanging out at the local beach. When he does roll out, he does it slow, so that all the pedestrians can get a nice long look at his sleek lines and killer chrome. He's got his own crew of robots to roll with. They stay out of the way of the rest of the Autobots, and the Autobots stay out of theirs. So, yeah, he kind of has the personality of like a lone drifter, kind of similar to, in some ways, to Generation 1 Sunstreaker and Generation 1 Trax, where he cares about how he looks more than anything else. So yeah, Big Daddy's kind of narcissistic, and so one could argue that he lives up to his name in that regard. And for his cyber key, oddly enough, on the product photos here on the back of his box, Big Daddy is advertised having a red version of the cyber key that was packaged with the Cybertron Optimus Prime action figure, whose shape is based off of the Matrix of Leadership, which is why it looks like it has two handles on the sides of it. But the actual cyber key that Big Daddy comes packaged with is a repaint of the standard Autobot cyber key from the planet Cybertron. So it's kind of weird to me that they originally wanted Big Daddy to come with a repaint of Optimus Prime's cyber key, but then they just switched it at the last minute to a standard Autobot cyber key. So just an interesting bit of trivia for anyone out there who's looking to find Big Daddy. Just note that Hasbro did switch the type of key that he comes with, so unfortunately it is false advertising showing the incorrect cyber key that he comes with, since it was changed at the last minute. But just to give you a heads up, if any of you guys out there decide to ever get this figure and add it to your Transformers collection, his tech spec, his strength and weaknesses, he has a physical strength of 8, an intelligence of 6, a speed of 6, an endurance of 8, a rank of 8, a courage of 8, a fire blast of 7, and a skill of 5. So his skill is his weakest point, so he has an average amount of fighting skills. Intelligence and speed are 6, so he has just above an average amount of intelligence and speed. Fire Blast is 7, so he has a fairly decent amount of firepower, and considering the fact that he has 2 shoulder-mounted rocket launchers, or missile launchers, that's to be expected of him. And then Strength, Endurance, Rank, and Courage are all 8, so Big Daddy is very strong, has lots of stamina, he's a fairly high-ranking member of the Autobots, and he is extremely brave. So what he makes up for in combat skill, and intelligence, and and overall speed, he makes up for with his strength, and his stamina, and his bravery, which makes him a fairly high-ranking member amongst his fellow Autobots. So yeah, overall, pretty cool summary of what Big Daddy is. But as I said, I wish that Hasbro would at least bring back the tech specs for modern Transformers action figures. The paragraph-long bio, I can do without it, just because of how lengthy it is. I know they were fun to read, especially since paragraph-long bios were actually introduced with the Transformers Generation 1 action figures back in the day. But overall, yeah, I'm really thrilled with it. So without further delay, let's get this guy out of his box and take a close look at him in the mode he comes packaged in, which is his alt mode. Now, one last thing I wanted to ask before we actually unbox this figure. One question I wanted to ask you guys down in the comment section. Do you guys miss the days when Transformers were packaged, transformed inside their alt modes, or do you prefer the way they've been done? They're done nowadays with them being packaged in their robot modes, like Armada Red Alert back there. Let me know down in the comment section what you prefer. What mode you prefer Transformers action figures be packaged in, alt mode or robot mode. Alright, and so here is 2007 first movie, Walmart exclusive deluxe class, Autobot Big Daddy out of the box. and in the mode he comes packaged in alt mode. And I'm going to just say this right now, I really miss the days when Transformers were packaged, transformed into their alt modes. It always made me excited to see the alt mode, because you saw what because I was just more excited to see what the character transformed into before seeing the robot mode and seeing the Transformers character. So that was always a treat back when Transformers were packaged into their alt modes. Transformers didn't start being packaged in their robot modes until the first Transformers action figure that started the trend of, well, that made this Hasbro switch from Transformers being packaged, transformed into alt mode, into robot mode, was Revenge of the Fallen Long Haul. His alt mode of a dump truck was so boxy shaped and didn't fit inside the packaging for the Revenge of the Fallen action figures that he gave his own special style and shape of box, transformed into his robot mode. And the following year, starting with the Hunt for the Decepticons line in 2010, Hasbro noticed that Long Haul, more copies of him managed to fit on the shelves than all the other Revenge of the Fallen Voyager class figures. They decided to switch over and have robot mode be the mode that Transformers action figures would come packaged in. First it was just leader class and large size Transformers that were packaged in robot mode, but then Revenge of the Fallen Long Haul led the switch to robot mode packaging, starting with the Hunt for the Decepticons line for Voyager class, and eventually Deluxe class and all size classes of Transformers action figures. And to this day, it really is a shock when you actually see a Transformers action figure transformed, packaged into alt mode. The only Transformers action figures that have come packaged, transformed into their alt modes have been the Commander class sized Transformers figures, and the only one I can think of, the only Hasbro released Transformers figure that wasn't Commander class that was packaged transformed into alt mode is the Target Store Optimus Prime action figure, which I have a copy in the box back there. I got 2 copies of that figure, so that one's going to stay in the box forever, and I already unboxed and reviewed that figure. But let's bring focus back here to Big Daddy. So here's what he looks like with all his accessory pieces of the 2 missile launchers attached to the side of him, and the Cyber Key here hanging out here on the back. Again, as I said a moment ago, he was originally going to be given the style of Cyber Key that Cybertron Optimus Prime came packaged with, but then they switched it over to the standard Autobot Cyber Key that has the sculpted Autobot logo on the center of it there. Air at the last minute, so it's unfortunately kind of sort of false advertisement that he has the original key and they switched the key, so the style of Cyber Key they were going to give this figure so late in production that the photo on the back of the box wasn't changed. But anyways, regardless, as I said, Big Daddy's a straight up repaint of a mold that was originally used on the Transformers Cybertron Deluxe Class Downshift action figure. He was green and black instead of being all black with the flame deco here that Big Daddy has. But regardless, Cybertron Downshift, it remains one of my favorite Deluxe Class molds from the Cybertron line. But before I get into that, just to show you his gimmicks really fast, like I said, since this is a repaint of a Cybertron figure that was released in 2006, and then Big Daddy was released towards the end of 2007, so the spring-loaded missiles, I just launched one. Let me put it back in. Yeah, these are spring-activated missiles, so this is from a bygone era, and for those of you who want to see just how far do the missiles shoot, as you can see right there, really far. There's a lot of power in the springs on this mold. See if I can shoot it up for you guys to see. And there, you saw it shoot up and come back down. So yeah, really fast, so you don't want to shoot yourself in the face with this. So yeah, there's 2 of them, 1 for each shoulder when you transform into robot mode. And then the main gimmick with the Cyber Key, you're just having to adjust the missile here. The missiles here out of the box for Big Daddy are really trigger happy. They aren't really trigger happy with Downshift. I don't know if that's a universal problem with the 2 versions of this mold. But yeah, this mold was only used twice. First for Cybertron Downshift, then live-action movie Big Daddy, so there's only 2 uses of it. It's a very sleek 1970s style muscle car, and it's kind of hard to tell if I can get it this light where my ceiling lamp is shining on it, but I don't know how well you can hear that compared to this. The top roof section of the alt mode is textured differently, and so it's to show that it's actually supposed to be canvas. So this is actually a convertible top sports car where the roof cover is deployed and the people riding are inside. So yeah, it's really nice that they actually there's actually a textured surface to the roof of the alt mode to show that it's supposed to be a convertible top sports car. So yeah, I really give a thumbs up to the designers at Hasbro and Takara Tomy back then in 2006 for designing that, for going the extra mile and making it a convertible top Transformer where the convertible top is permanently deployed. But one last thing I want to show off. The main gimmick, of course, since this is from the Cybertron line, is the Cyber Key. So you insert it here in the back window. That's where the Cyber Key slot is. And the main gimmick with the Cyber Key for this mold is when you push the Cyber Key in, it activates the Cyber Key gimmick of a chest cannon that shoots lasers out of the front grille section. So yeah, pretty nice there. On Cybertron Downshift, all the clear plastic parts were made out of clear air red plastic. Here on Big Daddy, they're almost like a smoky gray paint job, and the color used here for the weapon on the Cyber Key gimmick, it matches the color of the window, so it's kind of hard to tell because my ceiling lamp is trying to reflects off it very easily, but it's actually a smoky gray plastic used on the windows and on the grill cannon is what I call it. But yeah, really nice there. But when you remove the accessory pieces, this is why this is one of my favorite molds from the Cybertron line. And even though, as I said, I don't really enjoy Downshift's mostly green plastic, which is one of the reasons I was motivated to get Big Daddy after so many years since he was initially released exclusively at Walmart by Hasbro. When you remove all his accessory pieces and even the slot for the Cyber Key, you have to lift the back middle section of the back window to insert the Cyber Key there, and there's a little opening right there where you can insert your fingernail and lift the window up, and that's where you insert the Cyber Key, but you can fold it back down and then bring him around and take a look at that. This is one of the action figures from the Cybertron, one of the molds from the Cybertron line, and yeah, there are, on the front and on the sides, there are no visible robot mode parts. If you were to give this a passing glance, you would probably think that it's a toy sports car, but you probably wouldn't believe that it's a Transformers action figure. But even looking on the bottom section, the most visible robot mode part are the robot mode shins with the knee pads. Adds here. But even then, and that's hardly any noticeable robot mode parts. So out of all the molds from the Transformers Cybertron line, not just the deluxe class, but all the molds in general, the Cybertron Downshift mold is one of those ones where, with the weapons and the Cyber Key removed, it can easily pass for being a robot in disguise. Is because you can't tell that it's a. If you were to give it a passing glance without knowing it's supposed to be a Transformer, you probably wouldn't know it's a Transformer. And so, though I just enjoy Transformers action figures that do that successfully hide all the robot mode parts in alt mode and live up to the phrase of being robots in disguise. One thing you can do as part of the transformation on this mold is the car doors can technically open up, but it's actually just the robot mode arms on the top of the shoulder pads. And so when you do that, it doesn't really it takes the image away of it being a robot in disguise, since the windows don't transform now. But it's one of the few action figures from the Cybertron line where you can at least fake the car doors opening up and let someone in. Now, one thing that's really hard to see see if I can put my hand up here and shield my bedroom light from glowing out. But if you look inside, it's really hard to see with the smoky gray plastic on here. And here it has kind of a tinge to it. So it's like a smoky grayish brown plastic used for the windows. But if you look inside the windows there, This mold actually has 2 chairs and a steering wheel sculpted there on the inside of the windows. There's no way of reaching in there and taking a good look at it without tearing the figure apart. But yeah, there is a steering wheel and 2 seats in there. They're giving it that illusion of being an actual car that humans would ride around in. So I really, again, that's another neat feature that helps this vehicle to be a robot in disguise. There's 2, in addition to the steering wheel on the dashboard, there's also a gear shift in the center between the 2 chairs. So that's really nice of the designers to go that far. But one reason why you can't really reach into the seats to look inside is because the center enter area is where the contains the lever, again, for the cyber key gimmick to mimic. Where it amazes me how some of the designs for the cyber key weapons for the Cybertron action figures were somewhat intricate, and the Cybertron Downshift mold is one of them, where you insert the key on the back window and then activates a lever that runs the length, almost the entire length of the alt mode, to have the grill cannon deploy right here on the front. So that's what the Cybertron action figures are built around, was that gimmick. So yeah, overall, I really enjoy the second use of the mold for Big Daddy. And before we transform him for a size comparison, here he is next to his Earthrise Micromaster counterpart, Daddy-O. So yeah, this was Hasbro's first attempt at a modern action figure of Big Daddy, and ironically, even though the Earthrise Micromaster is much more accurate to Big Daddy's Transformers Generation 1 Micromaster action figure, the deluxe one at least has the Earthrise Micromaster beat by having the same name as the original Generation 1 action figure instead of the new copyrighted name. Now, because this is from the Transformers Cybertron line, the transformations for the Cybertron action figures were somewhat simplistic, and when the much more complicated transformations for the live-action movie figures that were released in 2007 came out, a lot of Transformers fans and collectors asked Hasbro to design action figures with more intricate transformations. I myself don't really mind Transformers with more simplistic transformations. I've always found them to be easier to transform. So the first step in transforming this mold, you bring the car doors out to the side like this. Then you have to unclip the back section of the vehicle mode and separate it from the window section. And again, the entire middle section is where the lever for the cyber key gimmick is located. And one thing about it is that right here in the center of it, the lever actually splits into 2 parts when you transform the figure from robot mode to alt mode, because that allows the cyber key gimmick to still activate in robot mode because of how the figure transforms. The entire window section just folds down and it hangs off the back as a backpack. So nothing too special about it, but it is one solid chunk, and that's something you hardly see on Transformers action figures these days. So the head is on a spring. That's why I was trying to clamp it down. And so technically, before you pop out the head, you're supposed to bring the legs back 90 degrees at the hips, then bring the pelvis up, and that is supposed to push up and have the head pop out. And there's the face sculpt. And as I said, Big Daddy is a straight-up repaint of Cybertron Downshift. And from the Downshift from the Unicron trilogy was basically Wheeljack, but Hasbro couldn't name Unicron trilogy Wheeljack because that name was given to a character from Transformers Armada whose design was based off of Generation 1 Sideswipe, and that's one of the greatest legacies of Hasbro having to use registered trademarks. A-marks is the name changing between Wheeljack and Sideswipe during the Unicron trilogy. I went about it in greater detail when I reviewed the Legacy Armada Wheeljack action figure, so please watch that. So anyways, have the legs focused out and bring the backpack down And there's one last glimpse of Big Daddy's head. As I said, the Cybertron Downshift mold was based off of Generation 1 Wheeljack, so when he's deployed in alt mode, his ears are folded up inside his head, but then they deploy down, and they are made out of clear plastic to show that the side of his ears light up when he talks, just like Generation 1 Wheeljack in the Sunbow cartoon show. But anyways, continuing transformation, flip up the knee pads, and the robot mode feet are inside. Alright, and then one thing you have to do to transform the feet, you have to flip out the tail lights of the vehicle mode, or actually the rear bumper section for the alt mode, and they become the heel spurs. And then to get the feet out, you have to, see if I can get a good angle to show you, just push down on the exhaust pipes very gently, then bring the heels back up, and there are the feet. They're painted, the toes are painted, nice vibrant bright shade of silver paint. It's the same one used for the hubcaps on the wheels and the knee pads. And if you wanted to have this mold do a Generation 1 pose, you could leave the legs connected to each other, but you're supposed to separate them like that, and he has independently moving legs. During the Cybertron line, ankle tilts and ankle pivots were joints that didn't exist just yet and weren't utilized by Hasbro. So to get Transformers action figures into a sprawl-legged pose, they either had their feet permanently sculpted at an angle so they could only be in a sprawl-legged position, or if you wanted them in a sprawl-legged position, you could, once you brought the legs out, the feet were just kind of floating up on the ground. So Transformers action figures didn't have the ankle tilt joints in the Cybertron line to do both poses while keeping their feet on the ground. So that's the one major gripe that most collectors will have with the Cybertron Downshift mold and the Big Daddy repaint is no ankle joints. And to complete transformation, bring this down. Actually, before you do it, doesn't matter which part you do, the last two steps. You flip out the hand from the wrist, bring the arm down, and then bend it at the elbow, put it at whatever angle you want, and then repeat the process with the other arm. I personally find it easier to flip the hand out first, then bring the arm down. And so the hand's already separated. Ready to straighten out everything. And there is the 2007 Movie 1 Walmart exclusive deluxe class Autobot Big Daddy transformed into his robot mode. Again, he's a straight up repaint of Cybertron Downshift, which I apologize for not bringing out for a size comparison. But yeah, really nice paint job that's faithful to his Generation 1 Micromaster figure. Speaking of Micromasters, let me transform the Earthrise Micromaster figure of him just to do a size comparison in robot mode. The arms are very difficult on this figure. Okay. So yeah, for a size comparison in robot mode, here is 2007 Deluxe Class Big Daddy next to Earthrise Micromaster Daddy-O, and it's the same character, just a different copyrighted name. So for me personally, I think it's kind of disappointing that Hasbro was able to give Big Daddy his original Generation 1 name when they released his 2007 Deluxe Class action figure, but then when they released a more genuine accurate Micromaster figure of him in the Earthrise line in 2020, they lost the trademark name and they had to give him the new copyrighted name of Daddy-O. But yeah, it is pretty nice comparison here, and here doing them together. And if you wanted to, because of the Target Master gimmick with the Earthrise Micromasters, even though it looks completely silly, if you have both the Earthrise Micromaster and the 2007 first movie figures of Daddy-O and Big Daddy, same character, different names, but yeah, he can totally become his own Micromaster Target Master if you want him to be. So yeah, like I said, it looks silly regardless of how you look at it. It actually looks like he's playing with an action figure of himself this way. But setting the Micromaster off to the side. Alright, his weapons, of course, are the two shoulder mounted cannons, and so you attach them by plugging them up here on the shoulders. You put them right next to the rear view mirrors from the alt mode, and they act as a stopping point where you're supposed to locate them at the shoulders. This is a problem that a lot of and just to warn you, a lot of fans and collectors who have the original Cybertron Downshift mold, if you unplug and replug the weapons too many times, the paint on the doors of the vehicle mode will rub off, and I believe it is true for Big Daddy too, so just be really gentle when you detach and reattach the shoulder cannons, because the paint and the silver stripes will chip off if you're too rough with it. And again, he has the silver live-action movie Autobot logo there on the hood of his alt mode, and the Cyberkey gimmick still works the exact same way. Even though it's not folded down 90 degrees at an angle, you insert the Cyberkey in the exact same spot that you did for robot mode as you did in alt mode, which is the back window of the vehicle mode, and it still successfully deploys the chest can in from the front grille section. And so it amazes me that the designers are able to design the lever so that even when it's bent at 90 degrees for robot mode, the Cyberkey gimmick still activates. Granted, leaving the Cyberkey gimmick hanging there off the back, it's very silly looking, but then, the designers at Hasbro and Takara Tomy weren't really concentrating on storage for the Cyberkeys for the Transformers action figures, especially when transformed into robot mode. But yeah, there's Big Daddy, and the chest cannons still work the same way. You can fire the missiles. And yeah, that's, again, it's a really powerful spring that launches these missiles, and when you put them back then, you will hear a slight click. If you don't hear that click, then the spring will have the missile fall out, so you really have to lock them into place firmly. So, because this is a figure that's repainted from a mold released in 2006, for articulation, the head is technically on a swivel joint, but because of its boxy shape, it can't really turn well, which renders the head articulation useless, the neck joint useless. The arms can swivel at the shoulder joint. They're in 60 degrees clockwise and counterclockwise. They can hinge in and outward at the elbow. No bicep swivel. You have a hinge joint at elbow that bends 90 degrees. The hands can only go in and out at the wrist joints due to transformation. No waist swivel again due to the hinge joint that transforms the waist back and forth between robot mode and alt mode. Ball jointed hips, which was a universal type of joint found on the Transformers Cybertron action figures. Figures having ball jointed hips. From the designer's perspective at Hasbro and Takara Tomy, ball jointed hips gave the most articulation that was available at the time, and it wasn't until a few lines of Transformers action figures later they switched from ball jointed hips to universal jointed hips, which act as a double hinge joint or double swivel joint in the hip, because it was found out that ball joints would become loose over time and would cause Transformers to eventually fall down. So if you get the arms out of the way, you can do a full 180 degrees and split with those ball jointed hips. If you move the arms out of the way, legs can go forward this far, so you got great forward kicking articulation. They have the potential to go back this far, but it's hindered by the entire roof section just being a backpack for robot mode. So if the roof was able to transform in a different way that would make it slightly smaller and not to just be kibble, then I suppose it could have worked better. Even though it looks like there is a swivel joint in the thigh that's carved here for the upper half of the leg, it's just sculpted detailing. There is no actual swivel joint in the thigh. You got hinge knees, which can bend 90 degrees if you get the leg up out of the way. And then again, the only articulation for the feet is that the toes can move up and down ever so slightly, but that's primarily due to transformation. Same thing with the heel spurs folding in and out, but again, that's primarily due to transformation. So, at the time in 2006, the Cybertron Downshift mold and the only repaint and the second use of the mold old 2007 first movie, Big Daddy. The articulation's limited compared to more modern Transformers action figures, but at the time when the mold was first created in 2006, this was pretty standard articulation for most Transformers action figures to have, and considering the types of joints that have been used on Transformers action figures, even going back to the Beast Wars line, it was, if not the same amount of articulation, it was slightly more than the articulation that Transformers action figures had enjoyed during the late 90s and early 2000s. By the mid-2000s, you had more articulated joints and Transformers action figures with greater points of articulation. By the mid-2000s and by the late 2000s, you had even more joints added. But yeah, there's 2007 first movie Walmart exclusive deluxe class Big Daddy transformed into his robot mode, and again, and bringing in the Micromaster. If you have both these action figures here, then Big Daddy can either be his own Micromaster Target Master, or if you want, you can make it look like he's holding an action figure of himself. So, for the final overview question I ask normally at the end of my reviews, do I recommend getting this figure and adding it to your Transformers collection? Well, here's the thing. Considering the fact that Big Daddy was released back in late 2007, early 2008, by Hasbro, if you can find him for a decent price, then I would recommend getting him because he has a fairly cool paint job, and again, as I said, the Cybertron Downshift mold is one of the best molds to come out of the Cybertron line. And in terms of vehicle mode, it's the best at being a robot in disguise. That's one of the reasons why I like it so much. The Cyberkey gimmick is not the great. If you do mind, let me reverse that. If you do mind a large backpack, no ankle joints, and very limited joints compared to modern articulation, and a head that can't even rotate side to side, then Big Daddy is an easy pass. As I said, the mold it's a mold that was designed back in 2006, and the top technology that was available back then, it resulted in the robot modes having more limited articulation. One last joint I forgot you can do, which is the transformation joint. You can have the shoulders go in and outward like that, so the arms can go outward like that, but it's not much. So if you don't mind having very limited a deluxe class figure with very limited articulated joints compared to more modern Transformers figures, then I would recommend getting Big Daddy and adding him to your Transformers collection. If you don't like all of that, then this figure can be an easy pass. Like I said, I got this figure primarily for nostalgia, because I did originally want to get it back in the day when he first came out, and it wasn't until last year in 2025 when I finally found him for what I felt was the last opportunity to get him added to my Transformers collection, when someone was selling him on Amazon. Back in 2007 when Big Daddy came out, that was the time when Transformers action figures, depending on where you lived in the United States back then, deluxe class Transformers action figures still had a retail price tag of about $10 to $11, sometimes $12, depending on where you lived. And starting this year, in the current year of 2026, the price of deluxe class Transformers is now out at $30. So in the 20 years since this mold was first released, the price of deluxe class Transformers has literally tripled by Hasbro, while the overall size of the figures has gone down. I'm sorry I didn't bring out any other deluxe class figures to do a size comparison with Big Daddy, but as I said, the average size for deluxe class Transformers released in the Cybertron line was about between 5.5 to 6.5 inches tall, and today it's been reduced to between 4 to 5 inches tall. But see if maybe I can reach back here, and even though he's still in the box, straightening him out as much as I can. Here's Big Daddy next to Retro Brawn, and even though Brawn's still inside his box, I'm holding them at they're standing at almost the same height they would if they were on a solid surface, and as you can see, Big Daddy is easily a head taller than Brawn is. Now, I know the mini-bots are designed to purposely be small-sized deluxe class figures, but yeah, deluxe class figures from the Cybertron line are bulkier than more modern deluxe class Transformers action figures. So I apologize I did not intend for the review to be almost an hour long. But yeah, I'm just really glad that I was finally able to get Big Daddy and add him to my Transformers collection. If you're nostalgic for the Transformers action figures that were released in the Cybertron line, and the repaints that were repaints of those figures that were subsequently released in the first live-action movie, then I'd recommend getting Big Daddy if you can find him. And even if you have his Earthrise Micromaster figure, you can make it look like Big Daddy is his own Target Master partner, or you can make it look like he's holding an action figure of himself. But if you don't like the limited articulation and not paying premium price for him because he was released in the first live-action movie line back in late 2007, then he can be an easy pass as for you. So thank you guys all so much for watching. This has been the TF Angie. This has been my look at the 2007 Deluxe Class first live-action movie Deluxe Class Autobot Big Daddy action figure. He's a straight-up repaint of Cybertron Downshift, and for what he is, being a action figure from the year 2006 and 2007, he is a pretty fantastic looking Transformers action figure despite his flaws and limited articulation and lack of joints in robot mode. So thank you guys all so much, and until next time, you guys, thank you to all my friends and subscribers for your continued support. Please remember to stay safe, stay healthy, and until next time, you guys, this has been the TF Angie. Looking forward to doing the next review with you guys. Transform and roll out. Goodbye, everyone.